All right, good morning. I know I don't usually get a chance to do the videos in the morning. Actually, my son's not feeling so great this morning, so I stayed home to take him to a doctor's appointment, and I'll probably end up going to work a little later. And I'm still doing my work from home, but I'm squeezing this in the meantime because I think it's timely what some of the things that are going on. So today I want to talk about money and our personal finance. And before I do that, look, let me sip my tea. Normally, I have my big thermos at work, or I get the little paper Starbucks cup from the cafeteria, and I have big drawer full of all these different combinations of tea bags. I always used to. So today is passion fruit orange mixed with chamomile lavender. I put a little lemon in it and a little agave in it. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. So now I'm good to go. Personal finance. So let me start with my story. Reason why it matters to me is because of my own situation, right? So you guys know, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I have 2 adult children, one of whom has some special needs. And I had to think about, how am I leaving them set up, right? I'm not gonna live forever. We like to think we will, but we don't. And, you just have to start to think about how are you gonna make sure your family's good, right? That's part of, stewardship and leaving a legacy, all those things, right? But for me also, it was practically how I'm gonna make sure my son is good if I'm gone. Who's gonna take care of him? Where's he gonna live? All those things. We know Social Security disability does not cover enough money for you to live on, all the stuff, right? And then for my other child, my daughter, I didn't want it to be something that she had to figure out because I didn't plan. So I didn't want to leave her with a burden of trying to sort through, all of that. And that meant I needed to figure it out. So I also had, personal need to want to figure out my finances better for my own sake too, because I don't want to work forever. And I don't want to be that person that's like, you see that 75 or 80-year-old that's at the welcome to Walmart, hi, come on in. And also like to retire before I'm dead. So, I knew that I'm behind on my retirement savings, and a lot of people are in that situation. Hopefully you're not, and that part might not resonate with you, but if it does, or if you say, even I'm pretty good shape, but I always want to do better and I always want to know more, we got to talk about it, right? In general, the thought is, and it's the thought for a reason, that you should have 7 streams of income, right? And or just have multiple things in place. So that generally includes whatever you have, your 401k or an annuity, or pension, which is getting to be harder to come by these days. Whatever form of your job's retirement setup that they have. And then your personal investments, like, do you have stocks, do you have bonds, do you have real estate, different things like that. Now there's a couple of insurance vehicles that people are using for investment as well. And then, do you have your estate in order? Do you have a will, a trust? What does that look like? Who's your trustee? All of these things. How much does it cost to set that up? And who do you even go to? Who do you trust? How do you know you've got stuff set up right? Do you have emergency savings, right? Do you have assets? Do you have enough life insurance? All of these things. So, some people try to work it out through having a side hustle, and saving that money from the side hustle, or investing that money from the side hustle. Some people live on that side hustle money and it's not really moving them forward. It's just helping them to survive. And then you got to think about, are you budgeting? Like, do you have a firm finger on how much money comes in and how much money is going out? And what could you do to adjust that, right? Can you live a little more below your means to make it make sense? Do you also really just need to find another income source? I know inflation has been rough these last, few years, really. But like, how are you adjusting your personal situation to make it work while all of the volatility and things are happening? So I'll back it up and tell you my little story. So I come from a family that's been middle class for a long time, and that can be kind of a rare thing in the African American community. My great grandmother on my mom's side was flipping houses back in the day, before they were calling it flipping houses. And she had property, we're in Southern California, we're in the Los Angeles County area. She bought property all over LA County. She had property in Lancaster. She had property going towards Palm Springs. She had a bunch of things in the Los Angeles area and in Santa Monica. And so at one point she owned a city block that is in Santa Monica that's right near, very near, where now the Crossroads School stands. And she owned a property that now belongs to First AME Church in LA that they were using, I don't know if they still are, but they bought it to use as their offices around the corner from the church. That's in the historic West Adams area. And she had property in Altadena that probably, I think it did get burned down in this fire this last year. But you get the idea. She was doing things. She had property all over the place. And she had a couple of properties that were taken by eminent domain to put the 10 freeway through. One of which was like a mansion-sized property in that historic West Adams area. But one of the properties that she was able to buy, side note, was the one that the First AME Church people have or had now. She was able to buy actually because of racism, because there was a white family that lived on that. Well, it was at that time a white neighborhood. It's completely flipped now, but these were big, nice old houses and mostly lined in mahogany and all the things. Okay, I digress, but you get the idea. Nice area, nice size houses. It was LA at the time. The family, there was a white family that was living on this block, and they wanted to adopt a baby. And they were denied the ability to adopt a baby because Hattie McDaniel, Oscar-winning, actress, bought a house on that block. And so since there was a black on the block, the white family couldn't get, they were not allowed to adopt a baby. So they moved. They sold the house. Who bought the house? Yeah, my great grandmother. So, anyway, there you have it. What she was able to accomplish was pretty significant in a time where there's still, obviously segregation, obviously, still going, before a lot of the civil rights movement things were happening. And my great grandfather, her husband, was working for the museum. He was a driver for the museums over by USC, natural history and all of that. So, doing pretty okay. Were able to put their kids through college. My great uncle, which was one of their kids, was a PhD in theology and graduated from USC, pastor. And my grandmother also multiple degrees, UCLA, go Bruins, and on and on. So you get the idea that family was doing all right. My grandmother went to UCLA alongside Jackie Robinson and his wife Rachel, and they were friends and things like that. And my mom went to UCLA, and I went to UCLA, and other family went to USC or other places and things like that. And even before our family migrated here from Louisiana, and from that, before that, from Haiti and other places, we had greats and folks that were doing college in the universities down in New Orleans and places like that. So, you know, you hope that every generation things get better, right? And that you pass a legacy, and that you are teaching people how to manage that legacy, how to grow it, and so that they can pass on to the next generation and they can do progressively better. I mean, that's what most people's hope is, right? And so what I can say is my grandparents did a wonderful job of, you know, building some assets and things like that. And then they did what they were supposed to do. They passed it to my mom's generation, and things kind of didn't go so well in that generation. And so, you know, a family home that was long since paid for was lost for various reasons. That probably was purchased around $50,000, and now is sitting at probably like 1.7 million. It's a lot of lost wealth right there, right? And other assets and things that people might should have held that they sold, or money that was passed that got spent, and things like that. And so bottom line is, some of the folks, not all, but some of the folks in my family did not successfully hold on to the things that they were blessed with. And I thought about, you know, what's the reason for that? And really it came down to, you know, personal choices, but a lot of it is financial literacy, right? So, excuse me, sorry, it's now the perfect temperature. So if you get given however much money, do you know what you're supposed to do with it? Do you know how taxes can affect things? Do you know, how you should structure things? All of that stuff, right? So bottom line is, some folks didn't do it as well as they could. There were repercussions, and here I come in the next generation, and I have to think about all the things I've told you about, like, are my kids gonna be good? Wanting to have a certain amount of lifestyle and things for my own self. I mean, I give a lot and I do a lot for other folks, especially my children, but I also care about my own standard of living and things too. And I work really hard, and so I want to make sure that I have something to show for it. I want to make sure that I have overflow that I can give, and donate and things like that. And I donate to stuff like, of course, my church, but like St. Jude, and I have a heart for charitable things that are food insecurity related, or foster child related. Just because I know that there's a large group of foster children who don't get ever picked, they don't get chosen, and then it can be hard for them when they age out. So that's just something that's on my heart to do. And I want to have enough to do that as I see fit. So anyway, and also, of course, I want to leave a legacy for my children, my children's children, if they choose to have some, and on and on. So trying to figure out how to put the train back on the track in my own family, for my own kids first too. And I had to start learning financial literacy a little bit better for myself in earnest, right? And in my work history for a little bit of time, I had worked as a personal banking officer at a bank that doesn't exist anymore. It was Great Western Bank, and then they got bought by Washington Mutual, and then they got bought by whoever, and it doesn't exist anymore. But I learned some things there because I was like that person that would open accounts for you, do referrals for securities, things like that. And I switched over out of banking at the time. I was doing it while I was in college, and I was interested in healthcare at the time, and I thought that would be a more stable thing for me. I'd always have healthcare benefits for my kids. My kids were really small. I was divorcing, lots of things. But then the catalyst that is like, yeah, I got robbed at gunpoint when I worked at the bank. It was one of those ones that was like a grocery store branch in the front of the market, didn't have bulletproof glass. It was a whole scenario. But anyway, so I stepped back from banking for a while. After that, I needed a little minute. And I got into healthcare as a nurse. And my thought was I was going to do nursing to pay the bills while I did the other things that I wanted to do. And fast forward, 25 years now, I'm still a nurse. And I am still doing other things, but I'm really kind of coming back into my own with that in the last few years as my children are adults, and I've made it through the period of time where my mom was sick and dying, and I spent years taking care of her. And so I'm at the point where I need to look at taking care of me, making sure, can I ever retire before I'm dead? Do I have my things in order for my kids? Okay. So I start learning financial literacy, and I keep getting mind blown, like, what? Because there's so many things that are out there that I don't know that everybody's really paying attention to. Web3, crypto, digital dollars, all of this. Aside from the basics, right? Having a budget, building your credit, your savings, what does that look like? Your investments, what does that look like? Like, there's a whole nother thing going on right now. And then there's all this global market shifting and changes in what the dollar is worth, the US dollar, which has been like the anchor for everything for so long for so many countries, and now that's getting a little wobbly. And what the dollar is backed up by, right? US dollar used to be mostly backed up by gold. It's not really now because we printed so many dollars, but that's another story for another time, and we will talk about it. But I kind of was going, wow, this is a moment. If we as a community, or as individuals, as people, if we learn these new happenings, these new products, these new digital things that are there, the crypto, the digital dollars, the stable coins, and all of the reasons why they're there, the mechanism and all that, you can really get in on some of these things at a price point that any average person can afford. But you just have to be really careful about knowing what you're choosing and why, right? So you may or may not remember during COVID, a lot of people did some investing in crypto because they were at home and they thought they had it figured out. And somebody that smokes a lot of weed said, buy this coin. And somebody that, works on contracts in space said, buy this coin. And people just said, okay, I'm going to be an insta-millionaire. Okay, I'm going to buy this coin that looks like a dog that has a little funny butt. Or, whatever. And, you might have made a short-term gain, and a lot of people lost a lot of money. And a lot of people lost a lot of confidence. But did you personally learn what you were purchasing and why? Or did you just think it was a get rich quick? Or did you just go on what somebody else said? And we have a lot of people right now that are just going on propaganda in the world in general right now and not actually paying attention to the things that are really happening, because it is it is popping right now, right? But all that to say is I wanted to figure out my own, and I felt like I could help some other people in the process, because when I started talking to friends, community members, and colleagues and everybody, people are trying to figure it out. And I can speak for some of the folks that I talked to in the Black community in particular, there was a lot of people, there were a lot of people, my mom would say use your proper grammar. There were a lot of people who were in similar situations, trying to figure out how they're going to make sure that their special needs kid is good, trying to put the family train back on the track for their finances too, or just trying to understand it for themselves, their retirement, whatever it may be. And people like me that are in that sandwich generation where you may still be helping your parents, but you're also still helping your adult children. And then you think, well, what's left for me, and how am I going to help myself, right? So as I'm learning basics of financial literacy and talking to people, I'm learning how much more there is to learn. And I saw a sign of wisdom, right? Not thinking you know everything. Being open to learning something from anybody. Everybody's got something that they can teach. But also, just paying attention to being nimble as things change, because they do and they have. So I think I mentioned in one of my other videos, I have a startup. And that came organically out of all of this, right? Trying to figure it out for myself and then going, oh snap, like people need to know this. And people need to figure out a way to help themselves. And in particular, Black community, we're almost at 0% wealth. And there's all these statistics, you can look it up online, Google it, that, by 2052 or 53, whatever that mark is, that our 1% wealth might literally be down to zero if we don't take some action, right? Taking action first starts with learning and understanding how to take action, and then making those money moves. So some of the ways that people really do pass wealth is through inheritance, right? One of the biggest things is life insurance. And then whatever assets you have, your house, car, jewelry, assets, right? Real estate properties, investment properties, different things like that. There's other assets too, but those are the ones people really know about, like your family business, etc. And then also structuring things so that taxes don't take a third of it or more in capital gains, or you don't have to fight with your cousins who came out of the woodwork and said, Auntie told me I was getting this too, and then everything gets probated and you lose a whole bunch of money, all that stuff, right? So, because when somebody dies, everybody comes out the woodwork and says, they promised me this. No, we haven't seen you in 10 years, kick rocks. But anyway, one of the things that I found that was the biggest hindrance for people is their student debt. And that is even a larger pain point for Black and brown people for a couple reasons. It also goes back to not having family wealth, right? It goes back to some pay disparities, or maybe just not making as much money for whatever reason in your job or your profession. And it's not because maybe you don't have as much education. A lot of Black people, especially Black women, have the most degrees behind and certifications behind their name than any other group here in the U.S. Google it. And but that doesn't necessarily translate to equal or equal pay, or the pay that should be commensurate with the education and the certifications. And then there's the additional things that sometimes in some communities, Black, brown, Asian, first generation, or just poor communities, you may have more obligations to people or family, community that you end up sending money to, right? So say you're a first generation person here, you're probably sending money home to wherever home is, and to help out your relatives and things. And you may be doing that on less money than somebody else who's doing the same job as you. Because your family didn't have a lot of money when you went to school, you probably had to take out more loans than maybe your counterpart whose parents were able to help a little more. And so you come out of school with more debt, and it takes you longer to pay it. And it takes you longer to pay it for both reasons, right? You have more debt, and maybe you're not making as much money. And then number 3, you got more places the money's got to go. So it can turn into a vicious cycle where it gets hard to feel like you can never get out of debt to move forward. And what that does is hinder people from sometimes starting as early as they should on their retirement savings, on building assets, buying a home, even things like getting married, starting a family. I can't afford it, right? It could prevent you from investing in the ways that you should in your retirement from the moment you start working. Start putting in for your retirement. Don't wait. It's the compounding that makes it happen. It's the compounding for me. So how can we do this? How do we solve this? And I made my company, I decided to name it Ujamaa.Financial. It's not because it's African specifically. It's because the name Ujamaa means cooperative economics. And I felt like if we do what we're doing now, if we talk to each other, if we help each other, if we share good information, if we support each other's businesses and that kind of a thing, then we all build each other's economy. And we kind of get out of that silo where we don't talk about financial literacy. There's been a lot of shame about finances in, especially I'll talk about the Black community because that's what I know. Because if you don't have it, you don't want to say you don't have it. You don't want to talk about it, and you may not know how to talk about it. If your family doesn't know certain things, they can't tell you, and you can't tell your kids, and on and on. So somewhere you have to break that cycle, right? And there's a lot of people who are trying to talk about financial literacy. You have to figure out how to meet people where they are, make it something that people can take in bite sizes, and really kind of commit to memory, but also commit to action at the same time. That's the important thing. Because there's one thing to have the knowledge, but then like, what are we doing about it? Well, how are we using it, right? So an average millennial has about $100,000 worth of debt right now. I don't know if you knew that. And that's not including a mortgage. And Gen Z's got a lot of debt. I mean, I'm not a millennial, I'm the generation above, but we got debt. I have student debt that from my own, and now I have student debt from my kid. So I'm sandwiched that way too. But millennials, $100,000 worth of debt, but Black millennials, you can add another $20,000 to $30,000 on top of that, and the difference comes from additional student debt. Let that marinate for a minute. So say your average white person comes out of school with $25,000 worth of college debt. They usually are knocking it down pretty good in the first 10 years of your plan. For all the reasons we already talked about. Maybe they're making more money, maybe their parents are helping them pay it off, maybe whatever. Average Black student comes out with about $52,000 worth of student debt. Average Hispanic college student is somewhere in between, and on and on. So it takes more like 20 years for the average Black student to pay off their debt, if they're done in 20 years, which might still not be the case. And by that time, whatever loans you took out, you will have paid at least double to get it paid off. And that is a hindrance, right? That's money that you could have been investing all that time. That's money that you could have taken on vacation. That's money that you could have been living your life. You could have bought a house with, whatever. And it also increases the likelihood that people are going to default for one reason or another. A lot of times through no fault of their own, and sometimes through just throwing up your hands and saying, I guess I'm never getting this paid off, what the heck, right? But you can, you should, because you need your credit, so you can do anything that you really want to do, like buy that house, like buy that business. You don't want to be in default because that screws all of that over. And at the same time, you should be investing, right? You shouldn't have to pay off this before you can start to do this. So that's why I built it. What it does is help you incrementally pay off your student debt faster, build your credit in the process, save some emergency savings, which you should also always have. And I'm not waving my finger on like that. I don't mean to. I'm just excited because crap happens, right? I mean, things are popping right now. You could go out on the street and walk into the middle of a, ice raid, or who knows what's going on. There's a lot of signals happening, and various financial pundits are talking about how the dollar is declining rapidly in terms of value, and that seems like it's going to continue. And like I said, markets are changing. So you have to figure out, how do you protect yourself and your family in a case of an emergency? What's your emergency break glass that I can still, get groceries? I can still keep my lights on. Or if I need to, go away for a while, do I have money to buy a freaking plane ticket? What you got, right? So like, you need some emergency savings. You need some life insurance, and you need some assets to be built. So what I built is kind of a holistic, all-in-one situation where we help you set it, and you can more or less forget it, and you go about your life. You make the purchases and payments you were going to do anyway, and you let that money work for you. So some of the money gets like a roundup towards savings. Some of it, when you spend at certain places, you get loyalty cashback dollars. Those dollars go towards fractional assets. So you might not be able to afford a whole house, but you can afford a part of a property, and some of those properties give you dividends. You can take those dividends and reinvest them, spend it, whatever you do. But the point is, the Ujamaa.Financial system would let you pay down your student debt faster, build your credit faster, build an emergency savings, get a free, you heard me say free, life insurance policy from one of our partners. It's a micro life insurance policy, but it's a way to get your foot in the door, and it's also a way to start thinking in those terms of life insurance. And then you get cash back, asset building through loyalty, through purchases that you were going to make anyway at retailers you were going to go to anyway, and for cashback assets that you can gain from doing financial literacy teaching, right? Not you doing the teaching, you learning. So you're helping yourself on all fronts. You're learning how to manage your money better. In the process, you're paying down the debt. In the process, you are building your credit, which allows you to do more things like buy your house, buy your car, start your business, get your business loan. You're saving emergency for a rainy day. You're building one of your 7 streams of wealth building, which is insurance, and you're growing your assets. And you're doing it all with the money that you currently make, and you don't have to wait to pay off your debt before you start to build your assets. That's a key that is a differentiator for us, because I think a lot of times we think, well, I would invest, but I can't afford it. I'm just barely making it. I would this, but that. Well, no, you were still going to go to, I don't know if you still shop at Target or wherever, you were still going to go to somebody's store, right? Walmart, Nordstrom Rack, whoever you were going to go, wherever you do your shopping. Food for Less, I don't know, wherever you go. Sprouts, Trader Joe's, whoever, and for your other retail purchases and things like that. And there's a bunch of retailers where, they do offer cash back for different things that you buy. And a lot of times you don't even realize that you can get those things, or your credit card can do something like that for you too. Some of the credit cards, like I have one that sends me discounts when I shop at different places just because I connected the card to it. I didn't use the card to buy. But you can use that money that you're getting back to put into the stocks you didn't think you could afford, or to put into that REIT to get fractional real estate, stuff like that, to grow your portfolio starting now. So I want us to talk more about money. I want us to be able to leave a legacy for our families. And I want us to not be left behind in that wealth gap. Having 1% wealth after all the things that Black and brown people and Chinese people built the railroad, Black people built the country, all kinds of things. Why are we down to, come on, man. Let's stop playing. Like, we can't be doing this. So anyway, we'll talk about it. And over time, I'm going to break down all of the different aspects of the digital money stuff that a lot of people may not understand. Because I do want you to, I'm not going to give you financial advice because I'm not, a fiduciary. But I will tell you what I see, what I hear, what I think, and people that I trust who may be a fiduciary or something that could be helpful. But the bottom line is, right now is a window of opportunity that may close. It will close, actually. It's not a may. Where you can, if you're paying attention and if you are acting, not just sitting there going, oh, that's interesting. If you're acting, even in small increments, you can start to build something that becomes valuable and something that you can leave as a legacy to your family. And I know we want to do that. But I know for a fact with 100% certainty, if you don't get on the bus and pay attention to the way money is going, the deficit is going to be at a point where you cannot come back. And that's not me saying doomsday. This is the fact. The train has left, the station. Stablecoins are here. Crypto is here. Web3, all that stuff is here, and it's not going away. In fact, this current government has really pushed it back to the forefront, certain aspects of it. And the ways that the governments are interacting or not with each other is affecting it and pushing it forward. And you need to be paying attention so you can survive. And that's part of having added beauty too, right? It's beautiful to be able to pay your own bills. It's beautiful to have a place to live and have food to eat and not be stressed out about it. And it's really beautiful to leave a legacy for your family. That's biblical too. And so I'm working on it. I'm still learning. I'll share what I learned, my wins, my losses, and what I see. And I hope you'll do the same. And I hope you will like, share, subscribe, and we'll talk about it. It's going to get mixed in with all the other things we talk about for making sure that our lives are comfortable. We deserve that. We deserve to feel less stress and having better handle on your finances and better handle on your health. Both reduce your stress, add to ease, add to that radical relaxation that we desperately need, and add the beauty. All right. So I will talk to you tomorrow, maybe later today. We'll see how we feel. Have a great day.